All right, so we should be recording now. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Wes Barefoot. I'm the Director of Franchise Development here with ShelfGenie. So this is the fourth edition of our weekly Franchise Partner Spotlight call. So really the purpose of these calls is just to give anyone that's interested in learning more about ShelfGenie an opportunity to hear from some of our existing franchise owners, hear a little bit of their story and their background, and let them explain a little bit of what they've experienced since joining ShelfGenie. So as we go through today, we will open it up for Q&A. And so today we have Dave Pazgan joining us. Dave is one of our newest franchise partners, actually. He's based in the Cleveland, Ohio, and area, and owns 3 territories that include Cleveland and some of the surrounding areas such as Akron. So Dave joined officially as a franchise partner in December, and you officially opened in February, though. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then I'm going to let Dave share a little bit of his background and experience, kind of what he's been doing prior to ShelfGenie. But he's got quite a bit of experience in franchising, so ShelfGenie is not his first franchise experience, although his first as an actual franchisee. And I won't steal any more of his thunder. I'll let him tell a little bit more of his story. So with that, Dave, I'll pass it over to you and maybe just kind of share with the folks on the call a little bit about your career background and just anything that you think would be helpful for them to get to know you leading up to joining ShelfGenie.
Sure. So actually, Wes, you might not notice, but this is actually the second time I've been a franchisee. The first time
I do know
was when I was 19 years old. I was going to school at Penn State, and I got involved with a college painting franchise called College Pro Painters. And so I was a franchisee of that system for 2 years and didn't know anything about anything. I sold a lot of paint jobs and did not execute them well. So it was an interesting experience, but I basically spent the last 20 years in 2 different fields. From the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, I was in the mortgage industry. I was at a company that I had started working at as a sales rep. And over the course of about 7 years, worked my way up in the company, eventually got to where I was the president and CEO of that company in 2005. And I started there in my late 20s. That company got to be pretty big. We had about 4,000 employees. We were publicly traded mortgage lending company. And in 2007, as you guys probably remember, the economy and the lending industry hit some pretty rough sledding. My company was called Novastar Financial, and we were strictly a non-conforming lender. And so our end of the industry went away in 2007, and I ended up closing that business down and laid off 4,000 people, including myself. So subsequent to that, 2 of the people that I had worked with in that business, one of them was my national sales manager. The other one was one of our top performing sales reps. Both live in Bloomington, North Carolina. They got together and started a company in the mobility and access industry, providing access and mobility equipment to, at first it was veterans through a program to the VA hospital network, and then eventually to just people everywhere, commercial and that type of thing. I joined that company 6 months after they started it. They asked me to come in and basically help them run it. And so I started running that company in 2008. And in 2010, we started to franchise it. And we started offering franchises. Then we now have 75 locations throughout the country. And I'm the president of that company. So, and I'm still running that. I've been doing that for about 11 years now. And I have other, several different entrepreneurial ventures going kind of as I've always have. I've got, the ShelfGenie business now. I've got a restaurant that I own and a couple other startups that I'm involved in. And then I spend a decent chunk of my time running the one-on-one mobility network. And so that's a little bit of my background, but I've always had an interest in franchising ever since I learned about it back when I was 19. And, for the last 11 years, basically operating a franchise business as a franchisor. And how I got to know about ShelfGenie actually is that Alan Young, who was one of the co-founders of the company almost 20 years ago, and I got to be really good friends starting about 10 years ago. When I got into franchising, I met Alan. He was franchising the ShelfGenie concept right around the same time in 2008. I think he started. We started in 2010. And so he and I got to know each other really well, and are actually part of a couple of groups that meet on a fairly regular basis to talk about opportunities and challenges in franchising. And Alan is no longer running the ShelfGenie organization, but still a shareholder there and still involved in some of the goings on at the office there. So that's how I got introduced to ShelfGenie. And I'll answer, I guess, maybe the obvious question, which is, with other things going on and some experience in franchising, why would I pick ShelfGenie as the right platform for me for another opportunity? And the answer is pretty simple. What I was looking for was something that was a very simple business, that was an in-demand product that people seemed to really like, and that was easily scalable. And so when I looked at the ShelfGenie model, you don't have to worry about significant amounts of overhead in terms of retail or any sort of fixed infrastructure. That doesn't exist. There are really only three functions in the business. There's marketing, sales, and installation. And all three of those functions are fairly simple to execute on. And then it's also scalable. There's no reason that you can't build a large seven-figure business within this franchise system simply by executing well in your current market, but also expanding into different markets. So, my long-term strategic plan is to, grow the Cleveland area and pretty quickly start moving into, other markets nearby and build a scaled business that has some significance to it. And I can do that with very little capital and very little, investment in terms of capital infrastructure, and also from a relatively low risk perspective, given that there is really low overhead in the business. So they kind of checked all of those boxes for me. Plus, I knew Alan, and I liked Wes and everybody at the office, and so looked like a good fit.
Awesome. Well, that's a pretty cool story, one that I've heard many times, and I did forget about your stint as a college pro painters franchise. So I stand corrected. This is your second franchise that you've actually owned. And I'm glad to have you on the call today, Dave, because the first three of these we've done have been with some more of our tenured franchise owners, which obviously they bring a lot of great insight. But for you as one of the newest franchise owners, I think it'll be good for some of these folks to hear from you. You've gone through the training and onboarding more recently than some of the more tenured owners have. And I mean, you're in the midst of really your third month in business right now, and that very critical kind of ramp up time. And I think, naturally a lot of people that are considering something like investing in a franchise, one of their biggest concerns is, can I weather the first 3 to 6 months to year, while I'm trying to ramp the business up? So, maybe take a couple minutes and just kind of share some of your experience, number one, in the training and onboarding that you went through, and then number two, kind of what your first couple of months have looked like. And I'll be the first to say you've gotten off to a fantastic start, because I know you probably won't brag on yourself, but maybe you could even try to shed some light in your opinion, what's led to, the quicker start that you've gotten off to.
Sure. And Wes, am I okay to give out specific details about performance, or?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I think Wes mentioned we opened February 1st, and it was interesting timing because the February 1st was also the first day of the biggest home show event in this Northeast Ohio area in the year. So we opened with a booth in the home show. That was our first day of operating, and it was a 10-day long show. So it spanned 2 weekends, from a Friday all the way through the following week and to the end on Sunday. And I had really no idea what to expect going into that show. I knew that the objective at the show was to get appointments, and but I just had no idea really how to quantify Like what does good look like? Like how many appointments should I expect to get? And one of the things that I did was I built a little home show model, a little calculator to kind of quantify all of my costs to be at the home show, and then take the number of appointments that I had thought I might be able to generate and factor in, average sale and average close rate and all those other kind of things to try to get a sense of what needs to happen in order for this home show to be a success for me. And the number that I picked, not knowing anything, was I picked 20 appointments. And my goal was, out of this 10-day home show, to book 20 appointments. And from there, I expected that we would have close to the average success rate in closing sales. And if you run the math on that, then the home show cost me about almost $10,000 to participate in, all in, including the move in, move out, booth expense, etc. But if I ran the math on that, 20 appointments leading to 10 sales gave me a fairly reasonable return on investment for that show. And that's kind of what I was thinking going into the show. So there were two things that were much, much different than what I expected. One of them was good and one of them was bad, but only in the short term. The one that was good was that we booked over 100 appointments at the show. We got really, really busy really, really quickly. And so in a 10-day period, and most of the action was on the weekends. So Friday evening, all day Saturday, and about midday on Sunday is where we booked the bulk of those appointments. But we booked 111 appointments off of that show. And so what happened was we had already assembled a team of 3 or 4 designers, and we ran into a scheduling issue. We couldn't schedule that many appointments with only 3 designers or 4, really up and running. And so that got pretty dicey. Everybody got really busy really fast. The other thing that happened was that we didn't really have time to do any real training of our designers. One of them, Donna, well, actually 2 of them went through the training. One of them went through the designer training, and then the other one went through with me the full franchise training. He's my son. He had just graduated from college, and so I brought him into the business. But we're still green, right? We sat in class and we looked at some stuff and we got moderately familiar with what's going on, but we really didn't know what we were doing. And so the first thing that happened was on the first 25 or 30 appointments, we didn't sell anything. And most of that was just due to being unfamiliar with the mechanic of a sales appointment and really how to get through that effectively, efficiently, do a good job on the design. We just were not put together in terms of transitioning from talking to a customer about their needs to envisioning that into the SketchUp software and then transferring that to the sales form and then presenting on the sales form and closing the sale. We just really didn't know what to do. And what was interesting though was that over the next 30 appointments or so, that problem fixed itself. I didn't do anything differently. We didn't have the time to put together any real training because everybody was still literally running, 2 appointments a day, all day, every day. And so we just had very little time to sort of catch our breath. And so it was almost a trial by fire. It was a live fire training experiment. And they got up to speed pretty quickly. Like I said, we burned about 30 appointments right out of the gate where we literally almost sold nothing. But within the next 30, we got pretty decent. And in the next 30, I would say we got to the point where our revenue per appointment and our close rate was right around the company average. And so I don't know if I would recommend that as a training strategy, but it worked for us. And so that was kind of the first surprise. So then we started thinking about, how effective this home show model is for appointment generation. And I like to think of the business in really simple terms. The engine of the business is generating appointments, right? If you don't have appointments, you have nothing for your designers to do. And if there's nothing for designers to do, there's nothing for installers to do. So you just don't have anything going until you have an appointment. And so what we pretty quickly figured out was that home shows and other events like that can be a really effective way to book appointments. And also those appointments were much less expensive to generate than, the traditional model. Like, when Wes and I went through the numbers originally, with the model, we're looking at $350, $400 to land an appointment through traditional advertising. Well, my appointment cost off the raw home show cost was like right around $100. And so I started thinking, well, how much of this can we do? I know there's this one big show, there's some other shows around. What could that look like at scale? So we started doing a couple of other shows and having some success booking appointments, reasonable success. And I guess my story is that I met at one of those shows at the booth next to me, someone that was working for a gutter company and had been doing sort of the event marketing circuit for home improvement for a couple of years. And I was just really impressed by him and how he carried himself and how he managed his booth and his effectiveness and all of that. And so spent a little time with him, learned a lot about what he did. One of the things that he told me that I thought was really interesting was that his gutter company executes 180 marketing events, physical events per year in Northeast Ohio in my market. And so that sort of blew me away because I knew that in the majority of ShelfGenie franchises, if they're doing 5 or 6 shows a year, that's probably typical. And here's a company that's doing 180 events a year, and this individual was managing all of that for them. So he had a whole team of people that he was managing that would work the shows, and they weren't booking appointments; they were just getting leads and then sending them to a call center to book. But nonetheless, I got really intrigued by that. So the long story short is that I ended up hiring him as a full-time marketing manager, and he started for me in the middle of March. And so since that time, we've been booking and executing show after show after show. Most of them are pretty small compared to the big show, the big 10-day show. That's the big daddy in our market. It's once a year. But there are lots of other what I would call medium-sized weekend shows that are either home improvement or flower and garden or something like that. And that's kind of the medium-sized shows. And then the really small shows are anything from, like, we got 4 appointments yesterday at a senior expo at a community center, and it cost me $200 to be there. And my guy worked the show and booked 3 appointments. And so we're executing on a bunch of that kind of stuff. And so how that's turned out is that we've been able to pretty consistently book right around 100 appointments per month between February and March. And we expect to be able to ramp that number up over the summer and kind of keep going from there. And then if we're shooting for an eventual RPA of $1,200, a 100 appointment a month run rate puts you at 120,000 a month in sales. So we're not quite there yet. We did 60,000 our first month and 80,000 our second month. And what's fallen through the cracks for us is we still are not where we need to be performance wise, just in terms of the effectiveness in the home, and that continues to improve. We just keep getting better and better. But my kind of vision is to create an appointment machine so that my designers can get as many appointments as they want. And we think that in this market in Northeast Ohio, through the home show circuit and other show circuit alone, we can get between 150 and 200 appointments a month. And then we'll layer on top of that some traditional marketing. We're starting a magazine ad in April. I'm starting pay-per-click in April. And we'll kind of layer that on top of it. But the centerpiece of our marketing strategy is basically the event marketing strategy that we have in mind. So in terms of the training and so forth, I think we got good training coming through the system at ShelfGenie. They taught us everything we needed to know. There are a lot of sort of moving parts and idiosyncrasies that you kind of only learn through experience. And it wasn't really that difficult. It took us probably 2 or 3 weeks to really get comfortable with the systems and how to navigate our way through the process. And so I've actually been working with some of the training team at ShelfGenie to come up with some documentation that sort of lays that out and makes that a little smoother and easier to understand. But that notwithstanding, it's not that complicated, fairly easy. And I think the trickier parts are, for your designers, are just, getting comfortable with the SketchUp software. It just takes, like anything else, it's an advanced tool, and it just takes time to learn how to get good at it. But the more they do it, the better they get at it. And they're, 2 months into it now, producing just gorgeous presentations to turn around to the customer that are, have multiple pictures in them and a lot of, descriptions and all this kind of stuff. And that type of thing has really helped us improve our close rate. So that was kind of a stream of consciousness there. I'll stop for a minute and let you guys follow up with some questions.
Yeah, I'll open it up to questions. Dean, Sharon, if you guys have anything, and if not, there's definitely a couple things there I'd like to unpack a little bit more. But Dean, Sharon, any questions for Dave?
I'm good. Very impressive. Good program you got.
I'll make sure I'm clear. That was February of this year that you began?
Yeah, we started February this year, February 1st. So, and
it seems
to put it into context, the numbers that we put up in the first few months were much better than I would have expected. I didn't think we would be moving that fast.
So it seems to me that your prior franchise experience certainly was a plus in getting up and running for you.
Well, to some extent, yeah. I think my prior franchise experience was a plus, mostly in terms of having the benefit of being able to observe 75 small business owners in my, one-on-one franchise system and watch how they behave and watch the ones that are successful and the ones that struggle and understand, what's behind that. And what I would tell you is that the average franchise at 101, and I think this is true in most franchise systems, they tend not to think strategically too often. They get stuck in the operational, aspects of the business, and they tend to get stuck there and they stay there. And one thing that I think maybe I've done a little differently outside of, I think there are only 2 franchises in the system that have a full-time marketing manager. I'm one of them, and I just started 2 months ago. And the other one is Alan Regala out in Seattle, and he's the largest franchise in the system. So I think nobody else has really done that. And what I'd like to do is build a model for it so that other franchisees can replicate it. And I'm tracking all of my data, so I'm really good at tracking information and making sure that we understand what's going on behind the scenes. And so I'll be sharing all of that with the ShelfGenie team at the home office so that, if this is something that others want to use as a roadmap, they can. But one of the big differences I would say also is that I entered the business with the intention of never doing a design appointment and never doing an install appointment. Because I don't view that as where I add value. And so I've been, and I said that a little bit tongue in cheek, like I told a few people, I made that comment this way, and I don't really mean it like this, but I think it illustrates the point. I don't want to talk to a customer. I don't want to hold a wrench in my hand. I don't want to have to know how to use SketchUp, right? And so the point of that was to say that those functions need to be done, and they need to be done well by somebody who knows how to do them well. But if I'm spending all of my time doing SketchUp on a design appointment, I'm not going to be able to build a 7-figure business as quickly as I want to build it. And so what I focus my time on is assembling the team and getting them together, up and running, make sure they know what to do, make sure they have the resources they need to be successful, facilitating communication. And I can give you a big tip on that in a minute. But that's how I kind of see my role. So I've done no installs. I've started bleeding when I went to the installer training within 5 minutes, which was a good indication of that I should not be doing installs. I knew that going in. I've done 2 design appointments. Both of them were disasters, but I actually sold one of them. But that's just not where I shine. Like, that's not my thing. And in the meantime, my team is executing really well. My designers are executing at a very high level. They know what they're doing. They feel very comfortable now. I have one installer He's cranking out all these jobs that we sold. They're coming in great. He's the right guy for that job. And now I have this marketing person full time who's focused on filling up the appointment bucket, right? His job, he has one job, get me 150 to 200 appointments a month. And I don't care how you get them, go get them. And so he's finding all these little shows and opportunities to go do that. And my job as the owner of the business is to facilitate all of that, but not do any of it, if that makes any sense. And I think as I've talked to other people at ShelfGenie, some other franchises, and as I've, observed franchisees in my other system in 101, I see a lot of people spending large amounts of their time, or a lot of owners spending large amounts of their time handling operational functions or sales functions, which doesn't allow them to do what I do. What I do is I spend my time on strategic planning, thinking about where we get to the next level, trying to hire top people that can execute the plan that we have, and now I'm not spending my time on my hands and knees in somebody's cabinet or sitting in front of a customer with a computer out trying to sell them the job.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Dave, and, to the point you made earlier, I mean, you are one of, two people that I know of that have a, paid marketing manager in place. And that's a bit of a deviation from kind of the model and how it's always been executed. And, the other instance where it's been executed, that's something that he really evolved into over the course of several years. And so, you've identified what you feel is a huge opportunity in terms of how you can go about getting appointments. And, we're willing to go ahead and make the investment, to do that. And for everyone, that may not be, something that you do day, in month one is go and hire, a marketing person to do that. But regardless, I think it's great insight as far as, how valuable these shows can be. And so one of the things I wanted to circle back on is you're talking about, all these different shows that you've already done and that you're lining up. If you had to kind of guess, or, I mean, you probably know the exact number, what would you say is the average length and cost of the type of shows that you're doing? Because, the 10-day, $10,000 shows are probably not the norm.
Right.
What would you say is kind of like an average show that you're looking to take advantage of?
Yeah, there's really like three categories of show. There's the big show, which is the big long show, and there's only one of those. Next year, I'm planning on doubling down. I'm going to do twice as big of a booth and hire a bunch of marketers and that type of thing, and really kind of go for it. But there's only one of those in my market all year. What you see a fair amount of in the middle would be shows that cost, I would say, between $1,000 and $1,800 to attend. They're a weekend long. They're usually from 3 p.m. on Friday to 5 p.m. on Sunday. And on those, and they're usually home and garden shows or home and flower or home improvement, something along those lines. A lot of those are in the spring. Some of them are in the fall. And so there's that sort of contingent of shows. And for each of those shows, we expect to be able to go in and book between 20 and 30 appointments. I'll give you a quick example. In March, we did a Stark County home show, which is, a lot of these are in like the county fairgrounds or things like that. So very often they're organized by county. And so we did a county home show. It cost me $1,500 was the booth rental. I paid $400 for my installer to put in and take out my home show display. So I had $1,900 in it. And so far, because we still have about 8 appointments to run off of it, so far we've sold $34,000 off that one show. So really, really strong ROI. And the cool thing about all of that is that there isn't a long tail on the cash flow. So when I ran a show on a weekend, I'm cashing checks like 3 days later, right? So people are writing deposit checks on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week as we're running out those appointments. And so I've been able to invest in these shows and get a very quick return on my investment. It's different than, say, like a magazine ad where I might spend, a $10,000 to commit to 6 months in a magazine. And I wrote the check already, and now I got to wait 6 months to see what happens.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about the shows. is, they don't usually, the really big ones require some advance notice, but I mean, most of them we didn't even know about until like 2 weeks before the show. And we just call them up and they're more than happy to take somebody else's money, right? Like they always have an empty spot or an open booth or whatever. And it might not be the primo spot, but that's okay. And so we've been able to book these shows, get into them quickly. And I will say the other aspect of executing on shows is effectiveness in the booth. And that was one of the things that I learned from this guy that I hired, my marketing manager. He knows how to work a booth. And so he's probably doubled our effectiveness at getting appointments in the booth from where we were, simply because he's just better at it. He's good at it. He knows how to do it. He's got the right personality for it. He's bringing on a team of people to help us with that. And so initially we found that, the designers were our booth people, right? They were the ones working the booth and they liked it. But once we started getting really busy, working shows is painful. They're on the weekend, they're all day long. You're on your feet a lot. You're talking to a lot of people. And so it's hard to ask a designer who's been out on 5 appointments this week to show up on Saturday and spend 10 hours on the floor of a home show and be happy about it. And yeah, they kind of want to do it because they feel like if they don't, they'll miss out on appointments. So the way we're orienting it is that we'll have people working the booths for us that are professional marketers, and they'll book appointments for my franchise or for my designers on their behalf. So they don't have to work a show and they'll still get appointments. And so that's kind of the model that we're building. So anyway, hopefully that helps, Wes.
Have you found somewhere that you can find these professional marketers to help work the booth, and what type of training are you giving them, or will you plan to give them?
Yeah, that's going to be the responsibility of my marketing manager to find and hire and onboard them. But we've so far we've been mostly fortunate in that we found all the people that we've hired through networking, including my marketing manager. I just happen to be next to him at a booth. So and we can continue to do that. And I would say part of the reason why that works is because these positions are actually great positions. When you think about the designer position as an example, it's a great gig. Like for somebody who wants to determine their own schedule, maybe they kind of like interior design, they like sales, and they want a pretty good return on their time. This is about the best thing I think you can find, because a competent designer doing an average job is going to end up earning somewhere between $50 and $70 an hour on their time. And they set their own hours, right? And so for a lot of people, that's kind of almost sounds too good to be true. And so that's something that we found it hasn't been a hard position to hire for. And mostly we just ask around. Like we ask people, we ask our current designers, hey, do you have anybody in mind that you think might be a fit for this? And if they're excited about it, then they tell other people about it and they get excited. And the same thing goes with the booth marketers. We pay our booth marketing people $10 an hour $15 an hour plus $10 for every appointment that they book. And I've got all of that cost baked into my model. So it all works. But again, same kind of thing for people that are, looking for reasonable pay, part-time work, and something that's kind of easy. And if they have the personality to go talk to people, then, it's kind of easy money. They can work a 4-hour shift and make maybe $100, including some appointment. And, it's just easy. And so we haven't had a difficult time finding people to fill those roles.
Where did you start? Obviously you started recruiting, right out of the gate. And how did you begin that?
Friends and family. So yeah, I mean, my design team right now is my wife, 2 of her friends from tennis that she's known for a long time, and my son. And so it's a pretty close team. We all know each other for a long time. And so that was an easy place to start. And maybe not everybody has that opportunity, but that's worked pretty good for me. And then my installer was somebody that actually used to work for me in the mortgage company years and years ago, and kind of lives in this area, and we stayed in touch. And so he was looking for an opportunity, and he had the right skill set for that. He was, running his own home improvement contracting business, kind of doing more handyman type stuff. And so this was a good fit for him. And I just hired my next installer. Same thing. It's a close friend of mine that I've known for a long time. He's retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. And, so he's got a good pension, but he's looking for some other stuff to do. He likes the flexibility. He likes doing that kind of work. He's very fastidious in terms of, his work ethic and the type of quality of craftsmanship that I think he'll produce. And so mostly I just tell people what I'm doing, and I have a very clear vision of how I think to pitch these positions to people. And so we pitch it a lot, and there's a lot of people that say, hey, that sounds really interesting.
Do you mind sharing your compensation model, how you're compensating the team?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for the most part, the designer and installer piece is pretty much right out of the ShelfGenie playbook. I pay the installer 10% of the net sale, and in exchange for that, he does the measurement appointment and does the install. And then there's some little extras that installers get for some of the idiosyncrasies in jobs. Like if we have jobs that maybe require him to construct something, there's a price that we add into that he gets to participate in at a higher level than 10%. And so it ends up on average working out to about 11% of the sale for him. And then I actually pay him $400 to turn my booth in and out. So if I do a full show where he's got to take my entire 10 by 20 booth out of the trailer and set it up and then remove it at the end of the show, I pay him $400 for that. So I've kind of got a fixed cost on that side of it. And then the designer commission is straight out of the book, 10% on regular deals, 20% on self-generated, and then it scales down from there depending on discounts. So it's the pretty standard deal. And then my marketing manager was somebody that I wanted to lock up and really have him on board as a full-time employee, and there isn't really a model for that at ShelfGenie. Alan, the other guy that in the system that has that role, I believe also has his person on as a full-time employee. So I pay my marketing manager a $40,000 base salary. I provided him with a vehicle. It's one of those little mini cargo vans because he carries around the smaller booth materials, like a couple cabinets and some pull-up banners and so forth. So I provided him with that. And then he gets a commission based on the sales that we generate from a show. And so it ranges anywhere from 2% to 5% on sales. And the variable is what it actually costs me to book appointments on that show, the average cost per appointment. And so he's got an incentive to keep my appointment costs low. So for example, the low mark is $100. So if I spend $2,000 on a show and he gets me 23 appointments and my show, my hard cost per appointment is $89, then he gets 5% of anything that sells off of that show. And so when I take all of that and model it into a marketing cost, like his salary, his commissions, his vehicle, payroll taxes, and all of that, when I model that all into my marketing cost, my goal is for that cost to be 20% of sales. And so a lot of that has to do with overcoming his overhead, which means we need to run certain number of appointments and have a certain RPA in order for it to be below 20. But for March, for example, which was the first month he worked for me, we were at slightly under 20%. So when I take what I paid him in salary, bonus, because he earned a $2,000 bonus from me last month, and it was only a partial month. So I paid him salary, bonus, I paid a car payment, insurance, and all that. And when I rolled all that cost up, which was around $8,000, and I compared it against the show sales that he helped, the two shows that he was involved in for that month, all of that cost added up to be about 19% of sales. And so in the ShelfGenie model, that works, right? That's a slightly better than a 5 ROI. And if you're consistently running a 5 ROI, you'll have a good net margin in this business.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah, good question, Sharon. And Dave, I'm glad you talked a little bit about, kind of how you've gone about recruiting your team so far, because, I know that's things that have come up on the other of these calls that we've done. I know it's usually a topic that people tend to have a lot of questions around. And, there's sometimes some concern of, well, can I, find the right designers and the right installers? And a lot of different franchise owners have different approaches to recruiting. And, I think sometimes we'd be better off if we just step back and maybe don't overthink it and, start with your friends and your personal network and see if there's anyone that's a good fit. I mean, to me, one of the most beautiful things about this business is you don't need a huge team to get started. You only need a couple of, one or two really good designers, one really solid installer, and that's going to be, plenty to get you off to the races. And then you keep building the team out as you go. So, I think it's an interesting approach that you've taken, and, one that would be a good starting point for most people is just kind of tap your personal network. But one of the other things I wanted to circle back to before we get too far into another topic is, talk a little bit about what you did in between the time you signed your franchise agreements and when you came to training, because, I mean, you literally came to training at the end of January and then started this 10-day home show at the beginning of February. And so you did have to lay a lot of the groundwork in between signing and coming to training to put yourself in a position to even take on a show like that. So maybe share a little bit about what you did in that time.
Yeah, I would say it was pretty hectic, just because we were on a short timeline to get to that February 1st show. And so I was a little bit behind the eight ball because I needed to get cabinets and get the glide outs in the cabinets and essentially build my home show display. So the first order of business was essentially to line up my installation person, because my intent was to have him build my home show display, and that would be the first, thing he would do. And so I got him committed and immediately ordered all the cabinets and glide outs and had him get to work. And so he spent about a week or so, I would say, assembling that whole show, basically putting that show together, putting countertops and all that kind of stuff together and fixing the boxes up and installing all the glide outs and that type of thing. So
building your display, basically.
Yeah. So I needed to get that done. That was a main priority for me for right out of the gate, because I had a deadline to meet to be able to be ready for that show on February 1st. So we focused a lot on that. Outside of that, a lot of just small setup things, getting bank accounts set up and, registrations with the state and all the little crap you got to do to set up a business. And then the other thing we did was we started working with Serena, who's one of the ShelfGenie support team members. And Serena started working with my designers on learning SketchUp and learning Wish Portal. And so I started having my designers go through the ShelfGenie University stuff and watch those videos. I started having them practicing on SketchUp and working with Serena on that, so that, by the time we were ready to go, people had a pretty decent working knowledge of the product, et cetera. One of the things that we didn't do that I would highly recommend is I would have your designers get a copy, either print one out or give them a digital copy of the master catalog and the designer playbook, and get real familiar with that. Because what will happen when they start to get into design appointments or even into any kind of questions at all is you're going to run into these situations, and when it's the first time you've ever seen it, you really don't know what to do. And rather than what we first started doing was calling Wes every time we had a question, and his wife Kelly, who runs the franchise in Wilmington, because they're familiar to us, and I know Kelly knows her stuff, so we started calling them a lot. But what we figured out was that 90% of the questions can be answered in the master catalog. And so to have your team get familiar with that and have a decent working knowledge of it while you're in the midst of setting everything else up can give you a pretty big advantage. And then, like I said, the other, learning curve aspect is SketchUp, getting comfortable with how that tool works. And then specifically the technical transitions from SketchUp to the Wishmaker tool to the Wish portal tool to how to take a job all the way through is something to get practiced on. And as I mentioned at the top of the call, we got all of our practice in front of live customers, and it was stressful. Unfortunately, the appointments were cheap, but it was stressful. So.
Yeah, and I guess the point I was trying to get at, through that question was, I give you a lot of credit for going to work recruiting your designers and installers, immediately. I mean, you signed franchise agreements, and then I think you probably literally started sending out text messages about, I think you had your installer pretty much, in place before you even signed your franchise agreements. And, I've seen some owners kind of say, all right, well, let me come to training. Let me kind of get training under my belt. Let me kind of get settled a little bit, and then I'll go to work recruiting the team. And I think you putting the work in up front before training, that's the only thing, or the main thing I should say, that puts you in a position to jump into a 10-day show. And I know you and I have talked about it. It's, you want to close every appointment that you can, but the value that your designers got by being able to run so many appointments in such a short period of time as they were just starting out and learning, that's huge value, because they learned much quicker than they would have if those however many appointments they ran in that month period would have been split up over 2 or 3 months, because you just kind of eased into it instead of laying the groundwork ahead of time so that you could really hit the ground running coming out of training.
Yeah, I would agree. I think getting some, some rapid fire appointments in front of your designers once you feel like they're ready to hit the road is valuable, because it'll just accelerate their learning curve.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Go ahead, Sharon.
Did you pay them for the training that they did up front?
No, I didn't. I brought one. Well, my son came with me for the whole training, and then he's 23, so I didn't need to pay him.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah, but one of my designers came with me to training, and I didn't pay her for her time, but I covered her expenses. So no charge for the training, no charge for, I paid for her travel and lodging and all that. So I just made it easy for her to say yes. And,
okay.
So all she had to commit was her time. And so that was it.
That's good.
The other designer that I have hasn't been to the ShelfGenie training specifically. She will probably go at some point, but she just kind of learned by mostly riding along with the people that were already up and running. And my wife is the same way. My wife didn't go to any of the training. She just kind of learned by riding along and, just practicing. So.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'll open it up real quick to you guys to see if you have any other questions for Dave before we wrap it up here.
Dave, so your installer did not go through training?
No, he did. Yeah, my installer did go through training. Yeah, so he came with me for the whole. He came for the whole week. I brought him for the whole franchise partner training, and then he finished the installer training at the end. Yeah.
That's not your son, though.
No, that's a different guy. My son does design. He's a designer.
You had quite a crew there at training.
Yeah, I think there were 1, 2, 3. There were 4 of us. Yeah, 4 of us all together.
How many installs is your installer doing a week?
It depends a lot on the job size. Like yesterday, he did 3. Today he did 1. So, but the 3 he did yesterday were smaller jobs. The aggregate sales value of those jobs was around $6,000. Today he did 1 job, but it was a $5,000 job. So that's kind of the way that we found that it goes is he can execute approximately $5,000 worth of business a day, including, his travel time and all of that. So, Sometimes that's 2 jobs, sometimes that's 1 job, sometimes it's 3. It just depends on the size of the jobs. And so he tries to allocate his time accordingly. So if he's got, a day where he's got 2 fairly small jobs lined up, he tries to fit in another small one if it's in the, within striking distance, to round out his day. So I figure that now that he's up and running and kind of up to speed, that he can be reasonably expected to produce 800,000 a year, 900,000 a year working at it full time. And so I'm just now at the run rate where I need a second installer, because we're going to start exceeding that probably this month.
So is your marketing manager the only one that you have as an employee? The others are 1099?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm considering, as we get scale, I'm thinking about whether it makes sense to have installers on payroll as employees, because I think you can probably shave a few points off your cost by doing that. If you had installers, you're paying them, let's say, $25 an hour, and providing them with a vehicle and tools, and you run the math on it, you can probably get to where you're maybe at 7 or 8% instead of 10 or 11, but you're taking on more risk, so it's a balance. To me, it wouldn't, if I did it that way, it wouldn't be because of the savings. That would be a benefit. I think mostly it would be that degree of control that you have over an employee that you kind of don't really have over a contractor. So, but
exactly,
I haven't done it.
And there are some other owners in the system that have their installers set up that way. So it's like with most things, I think there's some pros and cons to either approach. Well, good, Dave. This was awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this, and
Sure.
Thanks to those that called in. And I know this will be a great resource that people can listen into later. So in closing, and you did kind of hit on this earlier, but maybe just to kind of recap it real quickly. In your mind, knowing what you know about franchising in general, and then what you know about the ShelfGenie business specifically. What would you say are the 2 or 3 most important things that any ShelfGenie franchise partner should focus the majority of their time and energy on, as the actual franchise owner?
Yeah, I would say, appointment generation, it all starts there. If you don't have appointments, you don't have anything for your people to do. And I think we figured out that, even though logistically it can be challenging, event marketing is a really good way to generate a lot of appointments and do it inexpensively. And so however you go about that, I think that's got to be where you start. And I think also, sales effectiveness, I think that is a good number 2 to focus on. For, like I mentioned, for me, that kind of fixed itself over time, but we still have plenty of room to improve. And so, working on developing some training opportunities and doing more ride-alongs and kind of things with my people, or having, somebody do it. And the installation part, quite honestly, seems to have just sort of taken care of itself. And that's not a whole lot different than I've found in other businesses. And same kind of thing goes in my one-on-one business. If I have a franchise that's struggling, it's never because they can't figure out how to do the installs. It's always because they don't have enough revenue. And so I think the same thing holds true here. I was nervous going into my first real customer installs just because we hadn't done them. And I have confidence in my guy, but you just never know, right? So I think we've done 8 or 10 of them so far. We got our first customer survey back the other day. They gave us a 10 out of 10. All of the customers have given us really nice testimonials, and the pictures come out beautiful and all that. So I think, if you get a decent installer and up to almost $1 million of revenue, you only need one if they'll commit to you full time. Then, that part's sort of the easy part. I think where people struggle is getting enough business, and that all comes down to getting enough appointments. So that's the main focus for me.
That's good advice. Last piece of advice I'll ask you for is, for someone that's, really kind of considering taking the plunge into business ownership and is a little bit worried about kind of that ramp up time. What would you say to someone that has that concern, specific to your experience with ShelfGenie?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to take the leap. I feel really confident that what I've produced in the first couple of months is not an anomaly. Certainly, we got lucky in a lot of ways, and we timed it right. Inadvertently, it wasn't by design, but I timed it so that my first day open was the first day of the biggest show in this whole area the whole year. So that was a little bit of a stroke of luck. But that notwithstanding, I think there's plenty to do out there and plenty of opportunities to find ways to get appointments, and it can scale pretty fast. It can scale quickly. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. What I would focus more on is, what is your strategy for getting appointments and getting them in a cost-effective way? Because they're out there, and people really like the product. I mean, I've been very impressed with how much people like it. People are thrilled about it. And so that makes that part pretty easy. And just not to keep pimping my whole home show strategy, but I can tell you that the show and tell aspect of the home show is incomparable to running an ad or pay-per-click. When people have had the opportunity to come into your booth and pull the shelves out and mess around with them, they know exactly what they're getting. And it, I think, helps to improve close rates. And I think also it makes it easier to get appointments, because many of the people we are selling today are not sitting around weeks before this going, man, I need glide outs in my kitchen.
Yep.
But then they see our home show and they have to have it, And so that doesn't really happen as much in your traditional marketing, which is, I think, why those appointments tend to be more expensive.
Dave, did your installer have a blueprint or a model, or how did he know how to build that? I wanted to ask that earlier, but I didn't get an opportunity.
You mean my display?
The home show.
Yeah, well, he built the display. How did he know how to?
Yeah, so we actually worked with Serena, and she used the SketchUp tool to do a design for my booth, just like we would do a design for any customer. And it was down to, specs on the cabinets and specs on all of the glide outs. And so she designed it, and I just bought what she designed, and that's it. So it was pretty easy.
Great.
Yeah, so there's templates, for different size home show displays that are provided to new franchise partners. And historically, it's kind of been up to the franchise owner or their installer or whoever they delegate that to source the cabinets and the other things that are going to kind of make up this display. Part of what, the home office learned through Dave and some of the other franchises that came through training when he did, because they were up against a pretty short deadline as far as having shows lined up immediately after training. We're now providing an option for new franchise owners where we will actually build the display and get it ready to go and ship it to you, instead of it being left up to the owner. That was not an option when Dave came through. That was one of several pieces of very valuable feedback that we got from Dave after coming through training. That, you laugh, but I mean, really, especially, everything you bring to the table, from your experience running a franchise. I mean, we got a lot of good feedback from Dave in terms of how we can make the initial training and onboarding more valuable for a new franchise owner. So that was one of the things, Sharon, is, going forward, there's an option to actually just kind of buy it from us and have it done for you, or you can get the templates and have it built yourself. So a couple different ways to go about that now.
Well, it's probably 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, but Dave's installer certainly got some experience building it. So that was a plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, on that note, Wes, I was kind of thinking while you were talking that the cool way to do that might be your package includes the cabinets and the glide outs, but your installer has to put the glide outs in.
Yeah, that way he gets the practice.
Yeah. That was valuable. So
kind of ship not installed yet. That's a good
that'd be the way to do it.
That'd be easy enough to do. So
yeah.
Well, hey, good stuff. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your afternoon to do this. Dave, thanks for sharing all this. I know everyone got a lot of really good information out of it. And I know Dave will be happy to talk with any of you in more detail if you'd like to pick his brain a little bit more. So a couple ways you can get in touch with Dave here. You can look him up on LinkedIn. This is literally the only picture I've ever seen of him wearing a blazer. So I don't know where that came from, but
Kathy made me put that on there.
it's not surprising. And then, of course, his ShelfGenie email address. So I'm sure if you shoot Dave an email, he'd be happy to set up some time to speak with you one-on-one and share some more insight with you. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up with that. Dave, one quick question for you. I'm asking everyone as we wrap these calls up, what book are you reading right now?
Well, the one I just finished was The One Thing, but that's like the third time I've read it, so that's probably an easy one. But if you guys haven't read The One Thing, go get it and read it. It's life-changing. So.
Awesome. What's up next?
What is up next? Right now, the next one I'm reading is called Sapiens. It's not a business book. It's just like a history of humankind.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Let me know how it is.
It looks intimidating.
Maybe a good one for Audible.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks again. We'll let everyone go, and we'll send the recording around. But appreciate everyone's time. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hey, thanks, Wes.
You got it. Take care.